Hikikomori is a Japanese term often translated as shut in. It's used to refer to people who spend most of their time in isolation. While some hikikomori can spend several years confined to a single room, others allow themselves to have a few relationships and engage in simple activities like shopping outside. People can end up like this for different reasons, each with its unique story. This film is a compilation of 11 real stories shared by people from all around the world who at some point in life chose to withdraw from society. Hopefully, this will help the large number of shut-ins hiding across the globe and let others get a better understanding of what it means to be an hikikomori.
I was rather physically weak and sick during my early childhood. Lacking confidence and being rather shy, while also being physically weaker than any other child in the class, caused me to get bullied a lot and develop a negative mindset. I assumed everyone would always be unkind to me, no matter where I went, and that there were no good people left. Eventually, this caused me to change schools in later classes. I only lasted one day at a new school, and then I slowly became a shut-in who wouldn't want to go outside into the world again, but would be content with being alone at home as long as nobody would ever hurt me again. My hikikomori phase started when I was around 13 years old. My whole day was just filled with playing video games, watching TV, or being on the internet. Unlike today, I didn't even visit chat rooms. The only social interaction I had was with my family while I watched the world from afar, assuming how everyone I never met must think. In my own mind, I had the answers for everything concerning the world. But I was just delusional, explaining to myself a reality that I've just deducted out of my fears of life. Time had passed, and I developed a very strong social anxiety. Every time I spoke to some strangers, my palms were immediately sweaty, and my blood pressure went up. On the surface level, one could tell I had a general fear of people. But deeper down, it was rather the fear that my worldview of the evil world I saw couldn't be brought into harmony with what real-life experience may offer. My whole mentality depended upon that I had figured out how the world spins around. Every slight doubt through exposure with reality caused me to go severely insecure. One day, I understood that I couldn't just stay at home and never finish school. I had no friends, but I had my family with children that were around my age, which I knew for sure weren't as evil as the rest of the world for some arbitrary reason. So I was influenced by how they lived life by going normally to school, which is what every child ought to do. However, I didn't return to a normal school, but an evening school through which I was finally able to graduate when I became 18. Although I made it, it was a very, very difficult task for me to do. My anxiety was always present, and I skipped it a lot as I couldn't bear it just being present there. Even though it was just a few hours and there weren't any children to bully me, thinking back on it, I was really lucky that I got through it somehow. Of course, with finishing school, my life didn't magically transform into something better. My anxieties were as bad as ever, and now I was forced to get introduced to the world of work, which didn't work out for me. Besides having mental problems, I also learned how unfair the market was, and that people who graduated through evening schools weren't treated the same way as others who had a normal curriculum. After a year of applying everywhere, I was told to apply, and yet, being rejected, I decided to continue school and get a higher education. Eventually, I ended up continuing school focused around the social field. As other options and first choices didn't work out for me, I took what was there. This included 2 life-changing internships for me in a hospital and disabled people's home. The first day at the hospital was like being thrown into a lake of fire. They demanded from me to feed some old man with dementia while being left alone, and also to help with washing, showering, and even changing diapers of the helpless. As unfit as I was for this kind of job, somehow I endured it, learned a lot about life, and also got slowly freed of my anxiety. Finally, I could progress with my being, although through the most radical throw into cold water imaginable for a person like me. Later on, the disabled people's home served to me as a great self-reflection. Even though I was healthy, I had struggled similar to those who were there, not believing that others could be kind to me, doubting the world. I learned to believe the world isn't a fully dark place when I could take care of others the same way I had been needing it in the past. Even though no one reached a hand to help me in a significant manner, I learned to help myself by helping others. The same helpful hand I reached out for others also dragged me out of my miserable situation. I may not be fully normal, and may never reach what is considered as such, but I have progressed, faced many of my demons, and now I'm studying social work. I don't believe my future life can be without any struggles, but I have hope that things will get better and that I will continue to grow in life. I hope other Hikikomori out there can get out of their situation too one day. And I pray it might be a road which is easier than mine was. Slow progress is better than rushing it and getting hurt.
I worked for a pharmaceutical company since 2008 and got laid off in November 2019. The department I was working for was getting dissolved and the work was outsourced to the regional offices. I planned to take 3 months off just to rest at home before starting to find work again in 2020. Then, the pandemic hits. I gave myself another 6 months to wait and see how the world would be before I tried job hunting again. It's March 2021 and I have been unemployed for over a year. The truth is, the pandemic isn't the only thing that made me scared to go outside. It's the working culture that apparently have shifted so much compared to when I joined this company in 2008. Having a mother who worked for the same company for 35 years has made me put loyalty on top of my priority list when it comes to employment. Work hard for the company, make the company see you as an indispensable asset, and you're set for life. In college, I also got advice from the professors as we're about to graduate to find a good company to work for and stay there until retirement. They would say that constantly switching workplaces will not be beneficial for you because you will be judged as someone who cannot commit, as someone who cannot be loyal to anything. Previously, I've worked for smaller companies for only 1 year maximum. When I came to this pharmaceutical company, I promised myself that I would give this company my loyalty and work here until my retirement. And I was not wrong. The company had earned my loyalty. I was fortunate to join a department where everyone was friendly, supportive of each other. Most of them had been working there for a minimum of 10 years each. They were like family to me. There were bad times, of course, but with great colleagues surrounding you, you'd get over the bad times pretty quickly. Time went by, my great colleagues retired. The company's management changed, and finally the young, horrible people were in charge. People closer to my age and younger. Apparently, the world has changed and I didn't get the memo. The values that I held high all this time were no longer of use. Hard work and loyalty means nothing anymore. The management often ridiculed and was making fun of people that have been working there for more than 5 years, passive-aggressively calling us lazy for working there for more than 3 years, for working hard instead of working smart, making fun of us for being fools who worked hard instead of working smart. Slowly, I realized that my days were numbered. With new management, the order to automatize everything came. Whatever work that once was done by humans was replaced by systems, and whatever work left that was still to be done by humans was slowly moved, outsourced to another country. It took 3 years to transition. 3 unpleasant years. One day, 6 months before November 2019, the HR and my manager called me. We had a meeting saying that my employment will be done by the end of November 2019. I've anticipated this, of course, and accepted it gladly. The department I was in was completely gone by early 2021. Occasionally, I looked for job openings online and got scared. Sudden anxiety always came over and stopped me from sending those applications. Fearing that I will have to face this kind of people again, this kind of environment again. I don't want to meet these people again. I don't think I could work with people like that anymore. I came from an old world that no longer exists. I don't think I could fit in this world anymore. I've thought many times I should try something different. Now, I don't even mind having a low-paying job as a store clerk or even a janitor. I looked for it, but here, in my country, there's an age limit for these jobs, and I'm already way past this age limit, and with my previous employment history, I'm sure I was deemed overqualified for that kind of a job, and they would not even bother calling me for an interview. After a year of just being at home, I have lost the will to go out into the world again. I live off of my mother's pension. It's not much, but enough with my savings as a backup, for now. I only go out once a month to do grocery shopping or other errands. I'm lucky at this age I'm not married or have any children. This condition makes me feel that I'm allowed not to go hunting for a new job anytime soon. I have accustomed to the life at home and not meeting anyone else. I don't really want to go back outside. I have my cable TV and internet connection at home. It's enough for me. By occasionally talking to my friends on chat apps, I still get a glimpse of how the outside world is, and I'm really scared to go back outside. I don't know how long I will stay in this condition. I don't know if I want to get out of this condition. I feel like I need to fix whatever is wrong with my mindset first, with how I view the world first, before I can join the outside world again.
It is hard to find a place to start explaining how and why I became a Hikikomori. My entire life so far, all I've ever known is drugs. My parents were always either making, using, or selling drugs to get by. For a short time, they were making a lot of money, but it didn't last. Since the age of 13, I have been trying different illegal drugs every day to self-medicate my mental illness, but have not made any progress in getting better. All drugs give is short-time relief to my problems, but sometimes that's all I need to get by for another day. I recently moved from the West Coast to the East Coast of America because of homelessness and abandoned every relationship I had. Currently, I do not have any relationships or friends at all, even online. We were homeless for nearly a year, living in a tent, moving from campground to campground, while my parents struggled to support their drug addiction. Recently, I have been staying home 100% of the time because my father relapsed on heroin. He keeps overdosing, which sends him into a lifeless, unresponsive state, requiring me to call an ambulance to revive him every time. I have no major hobbies, talents, or interests anymore. Every morning I wake up, get high, watch YouTube, and get ready to do it again the next day. That is my entire life now. I genuinely don't know why I am still here. I have tried to commit suicide multiple times and failed. I have no plan on what to do with my life as an adult. I am completely failing every class of high school and have given up on anything I was ever passionate about. I genuinely haven't talked to a single person outside of my immediate family online or offline in months, and I feel like I'm going insane, let alone talk to someone my age. It's been at least a year since then. I constantly feel guilty about being such a degenerate piece of human filth, but I don't know what to do about it. I am failing school past the point of no return, and have no friends or even acquaintances. The only thing I have any type of talent with is computers. However, my family sold my computer for drugs years ago and have made no effort to get a new one. I have given up on trying to obtain a PC because it is impossible in my current situation. I do not know what to do with my life or where to take it, but I'll just keep waking up the next day hoping something might change. Thank you for taking the time to read my story.
I grew up as an only child. As far as I remember, I never really had any problems with making friends. Where I live, there were always kids to hang out with. But I feel like I could never fully relate to the other kids. I was a shy kid. Very shy. Every time someone would want to do something that would be naughty or mean to others, I would usually back off, because I would fear of what my parents would think of me. Because of this, I feel like I never really knew what it meant to be a kid. I couldn't really relate well with the other kids. While growing up, I felt accustomed to the self-company. I always felt more mature than the other children at school, and while I wasn't, that's what I felt. Even when I gained friends, I often felt annoyed at them while growing up because I usually felt that they were a little too childish. Because of that, other kids used to bully me for being different and not showing my true feelings, and instead only showing the facade of being better than the others. My parents have invested a lot in me, but I couldn't really excel in any subjects as well as any hobbies I decided to take up. I always felt not worthy and quite dim-witted by trying my hardest and, well, still failing. While I didn't realize this back then, I hadn't really learned any self-awareness until years later. When I was in high school, I started feeling the pressure from my parents' high expectations. Gradually, I stopped caring and instead flunked the school as much as I could. Still, I managed to graduate high school, even while having the lowest grades. My parents were happy that I still passed anyways, but I feel like they expected more from me. Looking back, I wouldn't procrastinate and run from school as much, but, well, the past is past and I can't really change it. And then it was time for college. So I chose to go to a public university that was far from my home, and the pressure of school and long transport hours was just too much for me, so, well, I had to resign. It made me feel lost and without any purpose at all. Throughout my after college, I didn't know what to do. I went to a local labor office in hope of finding any job. Even the simplest one would have been good for me. Unfortunately, there was really nothing for me. So I became a Hikikomori. I spent all of my days in front of a computer screen, being a part of an online forum. I don't really remember the name of it, and living my life online. From there, I felt like in an endless loop. Going out of the bed felt like taking on a challenge. My parents were really disappointed at me for not being employed, but I didn't really strive hard to go beyond expectations, and I usually just told them that I, was looking for a job, while in reality I was just browsing the internet for another dopamine shot. But in the year 2013 or 2014, I finally got the job, and after some depressing years, I finally had my own chance at being employed. I didn't really care what kind of job that was, and I still took it. 1 year later, I was working as a paramedic. Since then, I let go of my Hikikomori life and became a fulfilled employee. I felt both happy and proud of this role of mine. I finally had a place to be outside of my house, a place to socialize and feel needed as well as supported, and I could also help other people I need, something I could really relate to. Hikikomori experience wasn't the easiest one for me, but it learn me a lot of things. One of the most important ones was to never lose hope and to always love yourself no matter what, because in the end, we only have ourselves.
I guess you can call me a Hikikomori. Due to depression, anxiety, and a disability leaving me in a wheelchair, I haven't left my home in any significant way for the last 8 or so years. When I was 12, I changed schools. I lost contact with the friends I used to have, and I never got any new friends. This has left me very depressed due to this, and I dropped out of school at 16 because of the loneliness and the anxiety I developed along the way. I've spent most of my time alone in my room since then. My lack of education, coupled with my disability, means that I've never had a job and it doesn't feel like I ever will. I feel that the COVID-19 pandemic has given everyone a taste of what daily life is like for us. I hope it gives more people some sense of insight and understanding. Most of my waking hours are spent playing video games, watching movies, or researching topics online that I have found interesting in hopes of gaining knowledge as well as finding hobbies to occupy my time. Even though I don't necessarily enjoy it, I do it mostly to waste time so I don't have to think about what's going on in my life. The loneliness is slowly smothering me. I want so badly to connect with people, but feel unable to do so. I'm getting more socially behind every day. I believe I'm nearing the point of no return. Maybe I have already. This way of life lacks any sort of serious stimulation, and I desperately want out of my shut-in ways. All I'm doing in my life is killing time until time kills me, and it's no decent way of living your life.
I had experienced the Hikikomori state when I was overseas in 2017. Back then, I had just graduated and quit my first full-time job to seek an opportunity to get a sponsorship visa. But yeah, after 2 years of staying, I failed, and so I returned to my home country, which I really hate. Once I returned to my country, I had a conversation with my parents, and they told me I was a disappointment. That conversation turned into a heated argument. After only staying with them for 2 weeks, I decided to move to my cousin's place in a different city. My relationship with my parents was never good to begin with. Ever since my father divorced and remarried again with another woman, I never felt like I wanted to fix our relationship, considering how bad my childhood was. Moving out to my relative's place was indeed a gamble, because I also struggled to get a job. Most employers don't think I have solid skills, since I have to jump around several companies when I was working overseas. It took me months before I finally landed a job. I already felt guilty of being such a burden to my aunt. But then I finally moved out of their place now that I'd had an income. My motivation was quite good at that moment, and I kept telling myself that I'd work hard, save some money, and try to find a way to get out of the country again. But those hopes got crushed little by little during my time working in my home country. In short, the first company lied to me and didn't pay me in full. So I had to quit by force after several weeks working there. I only got paid for around 20% of the promised salary. With that salary, I had to live in a very poor place, which also caused me to get sick so often. Before my savings ran out, fortunately, I managed to get a much better job. I worked hard at the new place and even got promoted to a different position. However, I had a lot of issues with the workmates. The working culture in my country is mostly kind of forcing people to talk a lot with your other workmates, which is the very opposite of my working principles, since I love to just focus on my work and only talk when I'm done. But unfortunately, a lot of people see it the other way and think that I was just too arrogant, especially the part of me being an overseas graduate and my tendency to add English words on my sentences. At first, I didn't care about all that, even if it meant that I had less friends. But then another big drama was going on, and my team got affected pretty badly. With that much pressure, add with the work targets and the underpaid salary, my chest pain was coming back again. After enduring it for a while, I decided to formally quit and move back to my parents' place, since our relationship was getting a little bit better. This was already at the beginning of 2020, and then the pandemic hits. With my money running out and not many vacancies available, I decided to focus on drawing for the moment. And surprisingly, my parents were okay with that. This is when my Hikikomori state begins. I mostly only spent my time reading manga, watching anime or movies, and then only browsing endlessly about some fantasy stuff. At around that year, I also had some conflicts that made me burn 2 bridges with my closest friends. My confidence level was beginning to hit rock bottom. I was starting to lose the desire to draw, since almost no one supported my work, and my parents were also having financial problems too, so I felt like I was just being a burden at the time. I didn't have anyone to talk to and felt like the friends that I had in my country, they were all complete strangers to me. That situation was summoning my negative thoughts, and those thoughts triggered some kind of illness in my body. So I kept having those chest pains again, and it eventually became very bad since I also consumed caffeine like 2 or 3 times a day. I was really struggling to rise from my situation. Luckily, some anime and manga series made my desire to draw come back, and even my drawing skills are still pretty poor. Somehow making my creations alive are the one big reason that keeps me feeling sane and have the motivation to live. I had always dreamed to be a writer after all. Thinking back to a decade ago, I used to dream a lot of big things, but somehow I never really took a serious step because of some people's opinions and my lack of confidence. This year, I decided to embrace all of my crappy parts of myself, and I want to somehow make those dreams come true. I keep pushing myself to progress each day, so I can keep on walking, even if it's for 0.00001% toward my big goal. As long as I won't stop, I'll reach there someday. It might not be as soon as I'm expecting, but I'll surely make it there. I want to stay creating some creative works, stories, and one day can also work overseas. If it's possible, I want it to be Japan.
I've written many times about myself and my journey through life, but I've never shared it with anyone, so I'm kinda scared to do it now. What's pushing me to share it anyways is the mere chance that my story may somewhat be of any help to even just one of you, although there isn't a happy ending yet. A few things about me. I am a 26 years old man with no job, no social life, and still living with my parents. I suffer from depression since I was 9. I have ADHD and I am agoraphobic. I've never seen myself as a Hikikomori until I started to follow Hiroshi's channel and learn more about his and other people's experiences. It's weird how sometimes you just can't see what's in front of you until you back out for a second and try to have more of an overall view. To me, the Hikikomori state was something distant, something that only happened to the Japanese people I had seen in documentaries. And I had never ever even thought for a moment that I could be one of them. The same thing happened with anxiety. I only realized I had been anxious for most of my life, only at 22, 23 years old. I knew perfectly well how it felt, but I just didn't know what it was, and when I learned about anxiety, I just couldn't accept to have such weakness. Then I read more about social anxiety and a few other conditions I had been dealing with my whole life without knowing. For years I had thought depression was the main cause of all my suffering, and that was true, but I had never thought it could be the result of some other issues I had never addressed before. As I said earlier, I was diagnosed with depression at 9, after I was bullied at school. I asked for help to my parents, and they brought me to a psychologist. It didn't work out well. He didn't understand what I was going through, and it got to the point where he started to mock me for not being able to get better. It was bad. I thought about death all the time, and I became suicidal at 10, to the point where I almost jumped off a building. A kid shouldn't experience that kind of feelings at such a young age. I stopped seeing my psychologist, and I managed to make the bullying stop by myself. The thing is, the kind of bullying I was experiencing was psychological, and I didn't have the right tools to deal with it. Every time that kid taunted me, I just froze and couldn't fight back. But one day, he went beyond words and started to touch me and push me, which gave me enough strength to physically react to his harassment. It was enough to make him stop. After that awful experience, I changed schools. The few kids from the other school I considered friends never reached out to me ever again. My relationship with people slowly got worse and worse. You know, I've always been shy, and back in the day, I could barely bring myself to talk to anyone. Some people liked me enough to want to make friends, but I was incredibly afraid they would soon realize I wasn't worth the time, and they would abandon me. I was afraid of showing them my personality, because maybe they would have thought I wasn't funny enough or smart enough. So what I would do was live in first, always. As soon as they wanted more, I gave them less. I would say no to every outdoor activity that wasn't done at school. I wouldn't hang out with them or go to play football. I spent a lot of time alone, reading, playing guitar, playing video games, and watching movies. I built up my own little world. I didn't do well at school, partially because of my depression, and partially because of my ADHD, which I didn't know I had at the time. I only learned about it when I went to uni, and I started to notice my difficulty with paying attention to lessons for more than 5-10 minutes. How I never knew what was the last thing my teacher had said when a classmate would ask me about it. How it took me longer than most students to finish my exams. Before that, I had always thought I just wasn't smart enough, so I dropped out. I tried to get a job, but my anxiety and panic attacks made my life a living hell, and at the same time, they made me lose every bit of confidence I could possibly have. I isolated myself. Before the pandemic, I used to go to the gym. That was something I loved doing, and the gym was the only social place I went to. Now, I am a Hikikomori. In the last 6 months, I left home 3 times. I try to take care of myself as much as I can, when depression doesn't suck all my energy and motivation in. I don't know how much longer I can live like this. But I don't want you to feel pity for me. I don't think the world is a terrible place, and I don't hold any grudges towards people. I'm the result of a few bad choices and a bunch of unlucky encounters. But I've lived enough to see the good in this world. That I'd like to experience again, one day. Stoicism and meditation have helped me to get some clarity. Oftentimes, I feel like I'll never get out of this situation. Hope is everything I got left.
I wouldn't call myself a Hikikomori, but like everyone else, I experienced social withdrawal. As far as I remember, I felt the safest being at home, surrounded by comfort and protection. My room was my escape from the world, as some people abuse alcohol, drugs, play video games, so they could forget their problems and the reality that seems so cruel to us. I was no different. Had expectations for myself that I couldn't fulfill, and that made me hide inside my shelter, my room. I fell into depression, questioning all sorts of things. Everything that I had seemed so out of reach. My happiness, my health, my friends. Health was suffering since I was a child. In elementary school, I managed to get pneumonia 3 times in a row. And ever since then, my health wasn't in the right shape. But even during such unfortunate events, you have to keep fighting the odds for your own mental sake. I know how hard it is to feel all alone. Probably the feeling is way too familiar for all of us. We find peace in solitude, but it also brings us uneasiness if we have been isolated for too long. Weirdly, such moments come and go. When I changed schools, I was overwhelmed by it. Missed my friends, even though I was the one pushing them away, because I was a Hikikomori of my own mind. Our mind is a strange place. Once I tried to explain to my good friend how I feel, that too many questions about myself cause anxiety, makes me feel vulnerable, and I tend to hide to avoid such feelings. It was an emotional and unforgettable conversation. Friends are like medicine that help us heal. But it happened more than a year ago. Now I'm feeling more isolated from everyone than ever. And writing this lets me express the sad thoughts deep inside me. People like us want to be happy. We want to be free, but something is holding us back. Maybe bad experiences that we had before. Back in middle school, a girl rated me least by looks. It left such an emotional scar that the next day I didn't want to go to school. Why go if I'm getting judged? Why does she think she has a right to do that? All this because of a simple rating. Quite silly. I am who I am, not who you think I am, not who you want me to be. I am me. And agree, I shouldn't have let her mess with my confidence back then. Her opinion doesn't have to overcome mine. They say that happiness depends on your mindset and attitude. Let's all get happy and healthy during such a difficult time. Take care, and sending much love.
I was never good at socializing. Since I can remember, I would always get extremely anxious when interacting with other people. When I was around 6 years old, I got into a play fight. Only that the other person thought it was a real fight. His punches and anger were real, and that disconnect with others stayed with me ever since. My older brother also got beat up that day. That whole experience was a huge shock. I hated school since the start. I was bullied constantly. I was getting beat up and made fun of because of my looks since grade 1. By 5th grade, my opinion on school worsened. I despised it, and it showed in my grades. I fell from being top of my class all the way to barely scraping by. It wasn't all doom and gloom, however. Nearing the end of middle school, I was lucky to make my first real friend who also shared my interests and with whom I still talk daily. The summer after my last year of middle school was a lot of fun. My 2 friends accepted me for who I was and introduced me to more of their other friends, with whom I was also able to get along with. But then high school followed. It was horrible. Classes were boring and went on for way too long. I dropped out only a few months in. I made a deal with my parents that I would give school another try, just as long as they buy me a guitar. I spent the rest of the school year practicing, and I actually got quite good at it. Next year, it was time for me to keep my end of the deal. I attended a different high school, and I still had a hard time passing through the classes. Additionally, I would always skip a class if I had a chance to do so. I just did not have any friends at school, and with how terrible my grades were, I didn't have any motivation to continue. Thanks to the friends I made that one summer, I was not so lonely anymore. At least I still had people to hang out with. Suddenly, my dad got fired and I had to find a job. At the age of 18, I started working full-time. My parents urged me to focus on school and not the job, but that job was so much more fun. It did not bother me that the work required me to walk all over town. And I was able to practice my social skills more often as well. It was unfortunate that the whole business failed very soon after. With the money I saved, I decided to try and get a driver's license. Right at the time, some law changes made that whole plan much more expensive, leaving me unable to afford to finish. At the end of that very same year of 2011, my friends introduced me to a bunch of musicians who considered my guitar skills to be very impressive. We formed a band, and I had a great experience with them. We had lots of shows, and I got my first girlfriend thanks to the exposure. My happiness was short-lived. She cheated on me with my best friend. That shattered me more than anything so far. I still had fun playing with my band and drinking with the people I met thanks to music. That really helped me through the tough time. Early next year, I even met another girl. In the first month of our relationship, strangers beat me up. They stomped my head, aiming to kill me, and it never made any sense to me as I do not know who they were or what they wanted. That pushed me over the edge, and I was completely lost in depression, anxiety, and paranoia. My romantic relationship was ruined by my inability to cope. I became neurotic and angry, and I cut out all my friends from my life. I still had people who would get me out of the house though. I sought psychiatric help, but I could not get along with any psychiatrist. In fact, I even developed an addiction to the drugs I was prescribed. I started drinking heavily as it was the only thing that made me brave enough to step out of my house. In 2014, my life changed again. After an overdose of benzodiazepines and alcohol, I was forced into a mental hospital for a month. That month felt like years to me. Even after my release, almost all of my time was spent indoors. Everything from then is pretty much just a blur of fear of exiting the house, avoiding any contact and using different substances to numb the fear and anxiety. In 2016, I tried to get in touch with some of my old friends. It was difficult, and I only had the courage to speak with them when I was numb from alcohol. In 2017, I got hospitalized once again. I was kicked out of the house because I got into a fight with my dad. Using some of my savings, I was able to afford rent for a while, but without a job, that supply ran out quickly. My very good friend died soon after. I was devastated to lose such an ally. I moved to a big city and worked online. I was able to afford rent, but I never had any free time. Work never stopped and my life was filled with constant stress. I started self-harming intensely, unable to take care of myself. I had to swallow my pride and go back to my parents' house where I still am to this very day. On New Year's Eve 2018, I tried to kill myself once again. I ended up with an awful injury, but in fear of ending up locked up in the mental hospital again, I ended up never telling anyone. With no friends, no school, no job, and an overwhelming fear of the outside, I had no will to leave the house. I started a YouTube channel, which is doing surprisingly well, and I'm still doing some remote work to cover the bills. To this day, I am horrified by the outside. I have a car now and I am able to get groceries or drive around my area. I have no friends due to my irrational behavior fueled by my mental illness. I'm able to support myself financially with my work online, but I just want to go back to normal. I want to be able to go outside without feeling crushed by fear. I want to be able to communicate with people without acting like a total weirdo. I just want to live and reintegrate with the society, but I just don't know how.
I am an only child from a rather modest background. I was educated by my single mother. My father left before I was born. My mother did her best to educate me while working. Because of this sudden situation, I spent a lot of my childhood in kids' centres and daycares. I never really knew how to integrate with other children. I always had a faintness in my heart without me knowing it. When I entered elementary school, I started to be followed by different psychologists because I didn't talk, at least very little, without any of them ever really knowing what was wrong. I hated school, then college and high school, but I forced myself to go. I was pushed by my mother. I always had a mediocre level because I had no real interest in learning. It was at the age of 13 that I discovered my first online game, which, for me, was one of the triggers of my Hikikomori period. I wasn't thinking about anything else than staying at home and playing. I hated school, students and teachers so much that several times I was imagining doing a Columbine High School massacre in my head. Basically, during this period I tried to miss school as much as I could, staying where I feel safe, which is in my room, behind my PC. I thought that life outside is pointless. Kind people get crushed by others. I hate myself being kind, and so I isolate myself from others. Even online I was a solo player. After a series of several school failures, I started to live my Hikikomori period around 22 years old. It was a brutal shock, because I had to return to reality with the feeling that time had passed and that I had lived nothing like other young people my age. To cope with this evil being, I started using drugs I ordered on the internet to get out of my house and face the reality. I was looking for the effects similar to alcohol. For a simple action like going to the supermarket, driving, etc., I drugged myself to give myself confidence. I chained up low-paid odd jobs in the periods of unemployment while staying with my mother. I had no social life. Of course I had attempted suicide or put myself in dangerous situations. I'm fortunate to still be alive today, although I bear the scars of these past events. Around the age of 24, I met a girl online which made me leave my mum's home and I started to travel. This was my first real relationship. We stayed together for 1 year despite a very difficult relationship. This allowed me to have new interests and move a bit away from the world of gaming and from my comfort zone. At 26 I met my current wife, Japanese. It was difficult at first because I thought she was too good for me and that she would never like a loser like me. I had to lie about a lot of different things because I was afraid she would leave me. We began a long-distance relationship by seeing each other regularly in France and Japan. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. Today we are married. We both live in Japan and have a 10-month-old boy. Part of me has remained the same. I still don't like going outside if I can avoid it. I still have to drink alcohol if I have to do something stressful outside my home. The difference compared to before is that I know myself better and handle this with less consequences. I'm far from being a perfect father, but I try to give my love to my son because I think it's definitely the most important thing for a child to grow up well. I'd prefer him not to be as broken as his dad. Sometimes I'm afraid that my self-destruction side will come back, but for now, I'm doing okay. Of course, life is not always easy, but for once, I would like to stay a bit longer on this planet and see a bit of the future.
If there's one thing that all of us have in common, it's that we have a story. None of us got where we are overnight. For me, it could have been bullying from an early age, difficulties within the family, an inability to form lasting friendships, a tendency not to trust society, illness, low self-esteem. It's difficult to pinpoint. I'm sure that many of us can list at least a few. Some of them smaller than others, but compounded over time, something is going to give. For some of us, there's a last straw or breaking point. In some ways, I was broken from the beginning. I walked and talked a year late. Sure, eventually they taught me how to speak properly. I was clumsy, but I could walk and run, and yet for years I was isolated from all of the other children and made to stick at the back corner of the classroom. To add insult to injury, I was bullied because of my isolation. Perhaps I should take some blame for not telling them this, but I felt unloved by my family as a child. I coped with the sadness by escaping to fantasy lands in books and video games. My later school years weren't any easier. I was kicked, punched, and thrown downstairs. I was distant, aloof, and with average grades. I only looked forward to the end of each school day. At that school I had a handful of friends, but I eventually came to learn that all of them were bad-mouthing me the whole time. That's how it was for 5 long years. Somehow I managed to turn my life around during my college years. Things weren't perfect, but I made a couple of good friends, found a few girlfriends, started getting good grades, and even held part-time jobs. Finally, I had an idea of what I wanted in my future. You might say I was happy. I had no idea I was about to lose everything and become worse off than ever before. On Christmas Day 2008, I had a seizure. While it traumatized my family and my girlfriend at the time, it left me confused. I felt like I'd been hit by a train, but was left with many questions. Is this just a one-off? Am I going to be okay? More seizures in January, and I was diagnosed with epilepsy. At the time, I didn't really know what this meant for my future. I was still caught up in the moment of my newfound happiness. For months, I was in denial about these seizures. Each one made me go through hell, but didn't deter me from finishing college. Eventually, reality started to sink in. I was paranoid and struggled to contain my anger. After 15 years spent mostly in misery, I'd found a reason to live. But almost as soon as that started, it was over. It was as if I'd been cheated. A cruel trick. I felt suicidal. I wondered what I've done to deserve such punishment. As the months went by, my seizure frequency increased tenfold. They messed with my mind so much, sometimes I didn't know what was real. Maybe it's a good thing that my memories of the darkest years are partially distorted. I wish I could forget them completely. I attended university and made some progress on my studies, but was hospitalized regularly, so I kept missing lectures. Although my classmates must have known something was wrong, I did everything I could to keep my epilepsy a secret. Luckily, I only had seizures on my own, or with my best friend. Unfortunately, one day it happened. I could feel the seizure coming during class. The sensation is called an aura. There was no escape for me. It was over. I tried so hard, but all of my classmates saw how vulnerable I really was. My seizures caused short-term amnesia afterwards, and all I knew was that I had to get away, fast. I locked myself in my dormitory for 2 weeks. I didn't eat much during that time. My girlfriend left me because I became too bitter. I was failing all of my modules at university. I was a nervous wreck and returned home to my family. The following year, my doctor deemed me unfit to work. I was provided welfare and a place to live. It doesn't sound like a bad compromise. I appreciate all of the support I've been given. That being said, I never asked for this life. But here I am. For a few years I was still able to do normal things, like grocery shopping or going to town. After some time my paranoia grew and I developed agoraphobia. I didn't want to deal with the world. Society tries to write your future on a map. You're just supposed to connect all the dots. Not all of us can do it. What do you want to be when you grow up? Hollywood, the media, and our teachers tell us from an early age the kind of person we should strive to be. We're always fed these messages. In present time, we look at how our classmates are getting on through social media. Marriage, kids, a white-collar job, and a BMW. I'm sorry, but I can only be me. Even if my Hikikomori state changes, I want to go my own way. For 7 years, I've always been alone. Eventually, I found comfort in it. I've been stuck in a time loop, and I accepted it. My 20s have been completely erased. There is nothing about those years worth remembering. I'll be 33 soon enough, and time is slipping away. I do not want to be a Hikikomori. I hope people will see my story as a lesson. Although the circumstances that led to my Hikikomori state are not my fault, I probably had some chances to escape it. One day I want to help people avoid the horrors of Hikikomori. Life is precious, and it isn't worth losing your most important years. For a long time I have been a dreamer. I have dreamed of a new life. Starting over. It's easier said than done. But I have realized that if I don't do something soon, I'll be middle-aged before I start really living again. It won't be an easy journey. How can someone recover from almost a decade of damage? All I can say is that I will try my best. Thank you for listening to my story.